went and got my father's bowling ball. And they had a nice hallway like this in the house. My guess it may have been 25 feet long, but that was enough of a bowling alley for him and probably some compadres of his. And they got the ball rolling down the alley, and it rolled over a heating grate at the end, which wasn't fastened in quite right, so it flipped. The ball went down, rumbled through the round heating duct all the way down to the furnace. Now, the rest of the story has never been told, but I know we lived in the house for several more years. So evidently, someone got the ball out, someone got everything fixed. What's next?
When the family first moved to Santa Fe from El Paso in the summer of 1947, the house on Zia Road hadn't been completed, so the folks rented a house on Canyon Road. John was one of the big boys who roamed the neighborhood. He was about 12 years old then. So one day with the big boys, they did.
Someone came up with a couple of bolts and a big nut. These were about half-inch diameter bolts, I guess. But they said, hey, go get some kitchen matches. So all kids went and came back with a small handful of kitchen matches, and someone carefully cut the white tip off of each one, which, in case you don't know, has a bunch of phosphorus in it, so that when you strike it, the phosphorus catches on fire. The rest of that tip is highly flammable, sort of gunpowder, really. And so they mashed them all in there, carefully tightened up the bolts, and someone threw it up in the air. Up, and it came back down, bang, landed right on the end like it was supposed to. The compression detonated the match heads in there. The bolt flew apart, one piece went up, broke a telephone line, and I think it may have disappeared. But I do understand, from what I could see, all the kids disappeared.
So after moving into the house on Zia Road, Mark and Peter were born. So now, we had a very organized house of about 6 boys. Skiing consumed a great deal of John's time in high school. He worked very hard to become competitive. A lot of his skiing buddies were Johnny Dendahl, Ernie Blake, Buzz Bainbridge. Now, some of these folks went on to pioneer the opening of Santa Fe Basin, Ski Basin, and Taos Ski Basin. So that was pretty cool. He continued with the ski team even at the University of Colorado. Well, John also worked on cars in the garage. This was something he did with his next younger brother, David. And between the two of them, there were cars, old trucks, jalopies of various conditions of repair and disrepair. He also worked on motorbikes and hot rods. Now, John's brother David had many fond memories. Growing up, John was his hero. And David would tag along with John everywhere he went, including to the racetracks in John's hot rod. And all his mechanical ability he learned from his big brother. One time in high school, John, with the help of David, built a hot rod.
I really don't know which car he started out with, other than it was a Chevrolet with the standard straight 6 that was pre-war and post-war. But he found out that he could replace that engine with almost the same thing, but it was a little bit bigger and made for trucks. So he went through the junkyards in Albuquerque, found one, brought it back, and then started building it up. He ordered a camshaft for it. If you don't know about some of these technical things, don't worry. A camshaft is called a bump stick, and about as long as the engine is. It has all these funny shaped things on it. Those open and close the valves, and if you do it just right, you get more power out of it, or you get less power, and you get better mileage, and things like that. Well, he ordered a cam from a fellow named Iskandarian in California. He was the camshaft maker for the whole country hot rod industry. And he got this in, he put it in the engine, but he couldn't make the thing run right. So doing something I would have been afraid to do, he just picked up the phone and called the company. And the president of the company, Iskandarian himself, he said, oh, well, now, what you need to do is blah, 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 and this and everything, and you need to make, well, you have to have something to know just what the position of the crankshaft is. And so John said, oh, okay, I'll make one. And that was just the way he solved problems. If he needed a tool, he made a tool. And we ended up with a car that was very, very fast. It produced more horsepower than anyone in Albuquerque had ever measured on their dynamometer. So, well, that's John.
Brother David recalled how one day John found a coupon on the back of a Cheerios box, I guess. And, a comic book, okay. And it said, to send in the coupon and you could get the plans for making a motorized bike. So he built it and he proceeded to drive the motorized bike to Albuquerque and back. Now for those folks who don't know how far away that is, what would you say, about 60 miles? Yeah, about 60 miles on a motorized bike. Now this isn't now, this is quite a ways. So this is what happened on the motorized bike.
Between Albuquerque and Santa Fe, you go up and down a bunch of little hills, but then there's one big thing, La Bajada. And this was the hill that stopped the old Model Ts and Model A cars. They'd get part way up and have to stop and cool off and pour more water in the radiator, that kind of thing. By the mid-50s, it was basically just a fairly straight road that went up. But there was a rainstorm going on. Some idiot had decided that it wasn't very good to be driving in the rain, so he just stopped in the lane. 2-lane road, of course. And John was just following the white line, just kept it a few feet to his left, and hit this guy's car. But he wasn't hurt, the bike wasn't badly hurt. He did make it home. I inherited the bike when he moved on to some other things, but I never could get it to run very well anymore. And I think he probably just bent the crankshaft in it. And it was not a very good motor to start out with. So the bike just sort of faded away.
It sounds to me like the Brennand boys are into cars. What do you think? That's what happens when you don't have any sisters. You're really into more cars and hot rods and all of those kind of things. So let's see. Oh, one of the more interesting projects that John worked on when he got tired of cars was he decided to build a helicopter. Okay, so Dan, do you want to tell the story about the helicopter?
Oh yeah. These things, it didn't have a motor, so it was called a gyrocopter. You would tow it behind something, and the wind going over it would make the rotor spin, and when it spins, you get lift, and it'll go up. It does actually sort of work. Fortunately, he had the 3 blades pretty well made, but then he got to thinking about, well, how am I going to attach these to something that will let them rotate, that I can move back and forth to make it go this way and make it go that way. And at that point, he made a pretty good choice. He decided it was a lot easier just to stay on the ground. And that was the end of the gyrocopter.
So John entered CU and he got a Colorado University and got a degree in electrical and mechanical engineering at the same time. It took about 5 years. As an active college student, he was always involved in all sorts of things. One time he built a bicycle for 6 people that went in the homecoming parade in Boulder. It actually worked. So some other things were not quite so smart that John and his buddies at CU did. So do you want to talk about the ore cars?
Well, by the time we moved to Boulder, which was in 65, the street had been repaired. They had gotten a hold of a bunch of old ore cars from some of the local mines, filled them up with undergraduates, and then probably borrowed someone's tractor to pull them. And they went down the street and around the corners and things like that. Everything worked real well, but the tracks remained in the pavement for a number of years, as I've been told. And they finally got paved over. They're just part of the buried history now.
So after CU, John went straight to MIT and he got a master's in electrical engineering. But when he came home for Christmas time, some special things went back to MIT with him.
At that time, Coors was a very popular beer all over the West. It was not sold anywhere east of the Mississippi because of not being able to keep it refrigerated that far away. And so he would fill up his cars with a case, maybe 5 or 6, I don't know how many cases he could get in there, but a lot, and truck them back to Massachusetts, there to MIT, and that way at least the grad students could get through the winter. So, it's been a very nice time being out here, finding out so many people are very interested in him and his family. And now that you know a little bit of his history, I think we definitely served our purpose. Thank you.